Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RIP Sleep. We hope we're gonna rip your dreams to shreds tonight, except I'm not very good at scaring people. Joined to me tonight is my, what do you call yourself? Co-ghost? Co-ghost?
Co-ghost,
Uh, yeah,
co-host,
cook.
genius.
Yeah.
Oh
But either way,
God,
talking about Ghost, tonight's topic is the 2001 remake 13 Ghosts. Uh,
the most what is it? Guilty pleasure movie that I have.
yeah. It's one of the biggest guilty pleasure movies for myself as well. This being like one of the very first couple movies first couple horror movies I seen when I was a little lad. Probably watching it when I shouldn't have been because uh, very honestly only because of one specific character.
Yeah, the Torn Princess or the
Yeah,
Angry
yeah,
Princess, not
Angry
Torn
Princess.
Princess.
Yeah, the Angry Princess.
Yeah, but here's the thing with that. You got to remember that the nudity that is in that scene, they are prosthetics. They are not her actual boobs. So, that's a
That's
little thing
fair.
that one of our dear friends told us that we needed to bring up when we were talking
Yeah.
about this tonight. So,
Someone please fact check us so that we can say that motherfucker's wrong.
please, I'll even do it right now. Uh,
I like Because here's the thing, it was probably real just because a majority of uh the ghosts in that movie, nothing of the ghosts like physical looks in it like attire was done with like any visual effects, being this is 2001 at all. And they may have access being a company that was owned and helped run by, I believe, Warner Brothers. Because the production company is that created this movie was done by oh, excuse me, was done by Dark Castle Entertainment. Um, which this was, I believe, the uh second movie they had made. Um,
honestly, I'm
yeah, this was the
not sure.
because because the entire point was that Dark Castle was a production company that was made by Joel Silver, Robert Zemeckis, I think is how you pronounce his last name, and Gilbert Adler. And their entire point was to pay homage and like do horror remakes when it first started to William Castle movies. So the first one they did was House on Haunted Hill. That was the first movie they made and they followed it up then with 13 Ghosts. But I believe those were the only two movies that they were made that were remakes of William Castle movies. Because I think after that they started like going down a road where they started making more their own original movies like Gothica. Um, they directed the first Orphan. They produced the first Orphan movie, 2009.
I believe
Um,
it was 2009 when Orphan came out. Yeah.
and then they kind of started branching out into other categories of just more than just horror movies. I think they did a movie called The Losers, which is an adaptation of like a comic book at the time that had Liam Neeson in it. That was I think that was a pretty well named movie they did. Probably like the first big movie other than Gothica because it had Haley Berry and Robert Downey Jr. in it.
Fair. That is very fair. But I mean, you got to think 13 Ghosts does have our man, our Lord and Savior Matthew Lillard in it,
Yeah.
which I
And
argue is better than anyone that's in Gothica.
and to be fair, I think it was Robert Downey Jr. like before. This is like before the final rehab sentence before like becoming Iron Man and all that.
That's true. I think it was actually because I
Like
mean, Gothica came out in
like two
2003, so yeah, it was
yeah.
easily way before he became Iron Man because he
Yeah, it
did
was way
Iron Man
before.
in 2008.
Yeah. And Iron Man was like the first movie he did like because at the time people were like, "Oh, can they really trust this man like fresh out of rehab to play this like character?"
Yeah, we're getting off topic.
We are But back to the talking about 13 Ghosts. As I said when I opened this up, it's a remake. It was of a William Cass movie from 1960 titled 13 Ghosts. Spelt differently. They actually use the numerical numbering for it, so it's 1-3 Ghost. Whereas this movie, it's either normally spelt 13 or
I mean,
it's
everywhere
spelled.
that I see it, it's THIR, the numbers 1 and 3, and then EN ghosts.
Yeah, and that's how it is on most like the stuff that you get like physically. But when you search it up, you just type out 13 and it knows which one you want.
Yeah.
Um, but this was a movie directed by Stephen Beck. He also directed the movie Ghost Ship, The Abyss, and The Hunt for Red October. I don't think he actually did The Abyss or Red October. I think he just worked on those as the visual
Yeah,
effects.
The Abyss and the Hunt for Red October, he was visual effects on them. Actually, I haven't seen Red October. That's one that I
I
need to watch.
I don't think I think it was only 13 Ghost in Ghost Ship that he
Nissan
directed, and they
Pigeons. He actually directed that as well. I have no
Nissan
idea
Pigeon.
what this is. It's a
Uh,
1 minute short video. A group of pigeons attempt to poop on a new Nissan car, but it's too fast for them. It's, oh
it's a
God.
commercial.
It's
It
a
is a Nissan,
commercial.
and oh god, that is fucking hilarious.
That's rough.
Oh
I wasn't
no.
expecting it to be a commercial, but
But
as soon as I clicked
yeah,
on it, yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
But this man, this Stephen Beck has a very um unique. I want to say unique. He has a very um specific style when it comes to directing movies. Um, he especially for this one and Ghost Ship. He really leaned into the flash cuts, like the very quick, almost Michael Bay-esque style of like snappy editing.
yeah, that is true. I mean,
Because like
the one thing that I gotta say about Michael, or about not Michael Bay, Steve Beck, uh, he might have only directed like two like full feature films, but the man is consistent with them. If you look at them on IMDb, both of them have a 5.6 rating. They are
yeah,
consistent.
yeah. I like I said, it's a guilty pleasure movie.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
what it lacks in quality, it makes up for in uh every other aspect. Because I think the biggest thing with this movie that brought it down was probably the snappy editing. The writing definitely seems like there's pieces and bits that you're missing some information here and there. Um, on characters like the uncle in the movie,
Cyrus.
Cyrus. Like his entire like you kind of get what his motivations are.
Yeah,
He's
he wants to boot up the Basilisk machine or Oculus Infernum, whatever you want to call it. That was
he
made by Satan and powered by the dead, and yeah, he wants to
yeah.
become all powerful and shit.
His entire thing is he wants to have more money, and he wants to open up the gates of hell to do it.
That is very true, and I feel like like going back, the first time I watched this movie, I was easily, I don't know, 7 maybe, and like watching it then, like at the time, it scared me. Like I was scared by
Oh
it. Specifically, I was scared by two of the ghosts, the hammer and the jackal. Those were the two that really scared
yeah,
me when I was little. But then, like going back and rewatching it, a while ago, when you, me, and one or two of our friends all sat down and rewatched this movie for a guilty pleasure night, like rewatching it, it's so stupidly funny to watch this movie and think back to the fact that I used to be scared of it, when now looking
yeah.
at it, it's not even close to scary.
Yeah, that's definitely a point where that's brought up quite a bit with movies like this because it in those early 2000s, like when it was starting to like when the what did people reference to those like the 90s going to the Audi's or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Like the filming style was almost like trying to like shake off the 90s like the 90s fads and stuff.
Yeah,
But
I mean, this movie came out in October of 2001, so like,
yeah,
we obviously didn't watch this like right when it came out. We were born the
yeah,
same year, you know, to date us.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like,
We're actually
my
older than
mom
this
actually
movie.
went and saw this. I remember her telling me about it, and like she was like, it was such a great movie. And then her and I have talked about it since, and she's like, the movie is shit.
Yeah. Well, again, I feel like it's because it's like there's certain aspects that weigh it down. Um, like Matthew Lillard is probably the number one best thing about this movie.
Oh, absolutely, his character is
He
amazing.
his character's amazing. He eats up the scenery and throughout the movie, every single scene he's in, he is like full throttle. He takes up I don't think on purpose either. I think it's just that he's just so naturally charismatic in the role um, of Rafkin. Was that his name, Rafkin?
Yeah, it's Dennis Rafkin, I think was his
Yeah,
full name in the
Dennis.
movie. But I mean, like,
Dennis.
even like you said, like he just eats up like the scenes that he's in. Like one of his most like rememberable quotes from this movie is, "There are ghosts in the basement," and then another character named Maggie says, "This basement," and he goes, "Of course, this basement. What is it with you people? If it was the basement next door, I wouldn't give a shit, would I?" Like
Yeah.
he eats this movie. It's so good.
Uh, Even the lead up to that line, where he's like, "Did I say there's a petting zoo downstairs? No, there are ghosts downstairs, Arthur."
Yeah, he's just like he's just so good at like the at his character. He's whenever I've seen him play a character in almost every movie that I've seen him in, he just goes full into that character and just eats up that character and just becomes that person.
Yeah. And it's one thing I kind of wish that we saw a bit more in horror movies nowadays. And I feel like some people try to replicate the style character that he was. And that was kind of like, he's like saying things that I feel like a normal person would react to in especially from our generation to these type like if these events were happening. Like the scene where he's looking around downstairs, he's with the babysitter Maggie. He looks over and he sees um the one ghost behind the who is still locked in the cage and he hits the wall and he like it gives him a jump scare and he's just like shouting. He's like, I hate when they fucking do that.
Yeah, the I think it was the hammer that did that.
Yeah, the hammer. and
But it's like
it's even funnier because he's the only one that can see it in that scene. And Maggie's just like, what the? She thinks he's fucking crazy because I think that's the first ghost she sees.
yeah, I believe it is. But so like jumping into the ghosts, I feel like we got to talk about who these ghosts are. Like cuz we're throwing names around and we haven't really explained it for people that
Yeah,
may or may not have seen this movie. So the entire like quick summary of this movie, a guy named Cyrus, he owns a mansion and he passes away, and the mansion is then inherited by his nephew and
yeah,
his family, um, and essentially this mansion is made out of glass and it has like warding and protections on it that keep these
Latin.
ghosts like trapped within the mansion.
Yeah,
And the whole
yeah,
thing is that he needs all 13 of these specific kinds of ghosts to open the gates of hell, like he's been trying to do purely to get rich.
what a way to attempt to get rich.
Seriously, like there's so many other things, man. Like yeah,
Like
it's early 2000s. Come on, dude.
like the man obviously had enough money to hire a full team of like ghost hunters. I don't know, the opening scene in this movie, which kind of like shows off the editing style, I think, at its best with all the flash cuts and stuff when they first show you the Juggernaut character, who's the first ghost we see in the film.
Yep.
Um, and it kind of introduces to like how dangerous these ghosts can be. Because before you even see them, you start seeing like guys getting carried and thrown in the air. They're getting pulled in and crushed and mangled in body parts inside of this junkyard.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
like that's like honestly, like that's one of the things that like kind of, in my opinion, like lures people in to watch this movie. Is like it's definitely 100% a guilty pleasure movie. It's not a great movie, but it is great in its own rights.
yes, and that's what I was saying to like this movie. The first scene I think shows off a lot of the thing that's good with it and a lot of things that's bad with it. Specifically, when it comes down to the bad, is that video editing style and a bit of the dialogue that you get from some the characters outside of Matthew Lillard's and Cyrus to a point, but there's like you get introduced to like the characters that don't even mean much either in the movie. That's another thing. It feels like they had a couple extra characters that they almost didn't know what to do with,
Yeah, like they were just kind of there as like cannon fodder for the ghosts.
essentially. And I bring that up with like the I don't know what to call them. They're like PETA for ghosts.
Yeah,
But I
the what do they call them in the ghost activists or whatever it is? That's
yeah.
like ghosts need to be free. Da 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 da. So like everybody in this world knows that ghosts are real.
That's the thing though, is like if it's so popular that there's like ghost activists out there, we have scenes later where Arthur's character's he's looking at Matthew Lillard's like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's ghosts.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, there's a lot of um like contradictions in like the
Yeah.
world that this movie creates.
Yeah. Which I will say one thing that this movie does really good. It almost makes you want to learn more about the world it's taking place in because of going back to these ghosts, these backgrounds, how these ghosts are. Each of these ghosts feel like they have a story behind it, but we don't get to see much of that story of the characters in the movie. Like
Yeah.
you have to go out of your way to learn about the ghosts.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, cuz like watching the movie, they like you're saying, they don't really like go into the background of the characters, like, getting ready for this episode so that we can actually like talk about each of the, ghosts a little bit more in depth. Like I had to do a lot of searching and like finding these things, like articles, videos, different things to like figure out what exactly each of these ghosts are, what they represent, what the whole Black Zodiac is, and like the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, and there's you can tell they put a lot of the work specifically in like the art department went into the ghost designs because like I said before, these aren't like visual effects ghosts like used with like CGI or anything. These are real actors on set, fully decked out in makeup and prosthetics,
Oh yeah.
and that is I would say the second best thing about this movie is the prosthetics and the designs of these ghosts.
Oh yeah,
And I think we kind of
absolutely. The ghost
and
designs in
going
this movie are actually really cool and intricate,
yeah,
and there's something that's like, I see the way that the ghosts are designed, and they're absolutely amazing. They look
I
incredible.
I will say there's two ghosts though that I wasn't the biggest fan of in the design, and I would like to get those out of the way first, which are the firstborn son,
Okay.
which was the little kid that what the kid that had the arrow shot through his head.
So
Uh
you saying that is actually a good jumping off point for this. So the Black Zodiac, like, it's just like the regular Zodiac of, however those work. I don't know them off the top of my head, but so each of the Black Zodiac, they have an order for which they go through. The first son is actually the first in that order. He is
yeah.
the first of the Black Zodiac. The ghost's actual name was Billy Michaels. And do you know how he died? Because honestly, it's kind of dumb.
Wasn't
And
it he challenged his friend to a duel.
so it was.
Um
So
eh,
kind of, it was his friend challenged him to a duel because he was like super obsessed with Western movies.
Yeah.
So his
Except
friend
that,
challenged him to a duel, and he took like a little pop gun, whereas
yeah,
his
yeah.
friend took a actual steel tipped arrow and just shot this poor kid in the freaking head.
What an aim this Billy's friend had, because the arrow is like dead set
Yeah,
right
it's
in the.
dead set right above the nose. It's like it's right in the center of his head. Like that kid had great aim.
Yeah. But I feel like that character, that ghost specifically, I feel like we get to see him a few scenes, which that's another that's problem with this movie is we don't have enough time with like each ghost. They definitely were favoriting some of them, and I feel like the firstborn son got wasn't the least favorited, but he was definitely not shown that much.
Oh, absolutely. And like but the big issue or the big thing with the firstborn son, which is something that excuse me, while I was, going over reading and doing some background information gathering for the ghosts. His entire purpose essentially was to scare people into going down to the basement. So he would scare them to go down there so that the more evil ghosts could, enact revenge, kill them, murder them, however they're going to do it.
Yeah, his when they were luring the kid down into the basement.
Yeah,
He
Bobby, I
was
think
saying
the kid's name was.
Bobby, yeah, when they were luring Bobby down to the basement, he was saying things like "I want to play" or "Come play with me" and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and that was definitely like that's kind of like a creepy and attracting noise to make, I guess. I don't know if I heard the bodiless voices of some child asking me to play, I ain't messing with that.
Oh hell no! I'm getting the hell out of there. I'm like, nah. I think I'm good, buddy. Bye. Enjoy your time. Like,
Ugh,
hell no.
yeah. And then moving on, I think the other one that I can say that I also wasn't, I was a bit more of a fan of the design, uh, just because like it was kind of cool how they moved everything for this, which was the torso.
Yep.
Um, uh, which I know his backstory is that he was his name was Jimmy Gambino, and he was like the gambler.
Yeah,
And
he was.
he lived in the early 1900s, but he was a at that time with mafia and all that. Uh he got himself into the sticky situation type.
Oh, absolutely. And that was like his whole thing. It was essentially like he was like obsessed with gambling, and a mob boss like made a bet with him, and when he lost and couldn't pay, they, chopped him up and, wrapped him in plastic wrap and threw him into the water. And once again, Robert, you go directly in the order of them. The torso is the second in the Black Zodiac for
I
this.
I'm I'm just saying the torso. It's cool how they like had it was a ghost who quite literally couldn't really do too much damage, but he was visually
Disturbing.
uh disturbing because he's literally just no head. He's just arms and the torso and the entire torso.
Yeah, no
Like
legs. Well,
like
like he did have a head. His head was always in front of him, perpetually screaming.
yeah. Yeah, but that's another thing where I say the editing comes in here because I feel like we get like what two scenes before the ending where we get a good visual of him.
Yeah, it's very few that we get good visuals of the torso, and and same with the firstborn son, and that's definitely going back to we didn't get enough um
Time.
time
We
with
didn't get enough.
each of these ghosts.
Yeah.
So
Um.
jumping off that, so the third in the Black Zodiac is the Bound Woman, and
Yes.
like her backstory is kind of messed up. So her name is Susan Legros, and her entire thing was that she was a high schooler that was in a sense, for lack of a better word that I can't think of, she was promiscuous. Um, and on her senior prom night, she cheated on her boyfriend at the time, and then the guy that she cheated on him with was found a couple days later beaten to death, and then she was found buried under the 50-yard line, strangled to death, like covered in strangulation marks and like all this other crazy stuff. Honestly, I don't really like her character design just because it's very like I know that a lot of times they're like less is more, but I feel like there could have been a little bit more for her. Like her whole thing was that she was just in her graduation dress and she like hung by a belt that was not connected to anything, that just kind of she just floated around.
Yeah, she was. That's another good point. The only reason I wasn't too upset with her is because she suffered from the same thing as the last two. She just didn't have enough screen time for me to really want to pay attention to her.
Yeah, and
She
I completely agree with you on that. I feel it
and
like
she played the same role as like the firstborn son. She was just kind of
she was there to
she
scare
was
people. I mean, all
scare
three
people
of
and
the ones
lure.
that we've talked about so far, the torso,
Yeah,
the firstborn son, and the bound woman, that like none of them could really do any damage to people. They're just kind of there to psychologically damage them, not physically.
man. I want to see what. I wish we got to see how they were some of these were captured because imagine watching the reaction of Matthew Little's character seeing like the torso for the first time.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I would adore to see it actually. Like that is something that I really want to see. So continuing down the order that we've gone, do you know who the fourth in the Zodiac is?
That is the withered lover, correct?
Yep, that is the Withered Lover. She was the fourth of the Black Zodiac.
Yeah.
And she is Jean what the hell? How do you pronounce this these last names? Jean uh
I think it's Kritkos. I'm gonna say
Kritkos.
Kritkos because that's easy to pronounce if it's something different. If it's something different,
Yeah, I think
but
it is Kritkos, but she's if
she
you know the backstory on her, go for it.
yeah, she is the ghost with the most direct relationship to our main cast, which we haven't really talked about before, which is the story specifically revolves around the characters Arthur, who is a widowed father and has two children, which is his youngest son Bobby, and then his eldest daughter Kathy. Which, if you ever watched the movie, some people might recognize Kathy, who's played by Shannon Elizabeth. I believe she played in the American Pie movies, at least the first two.
Yep, and she was in
Uh,
the first Scary Movie as well.
yes, she was in that as well. And then Tony Shalhoub. I'm
Shalahub.
not.
I don't know exactly how to say his name, but
Please apologize my mispronounce. Please
minute
apologize
that
my
I saw him, that
mispronunciation. He's another actor.
yeah, and the only thing
He's
that
in a.
I can remember that I could remember him from initially at first was the Spy Kids movie
Yep, yep. He played in
because
the
he
Spy
played
Kids
Minion.
movie as Minion. A bigger thing that I have always loved watching him in, he played in the show Monk, which I believe came out very close around to the time of this movie.
Yeah,
Um, and
2002.
although I love his work, I will say he probably does the weakest acting in this movie. But I'll get on that later. Going back to the ghosts, the widowed lover is the wife of Arthur. She died in a house fire, um, which I don't think we ever get to any background on how that started. But was his she was Arthur's wife and the mother of his two kids. And she did die in that. Well, she died in the hospital, but she died due to the injuries she suffered
Received.
from the fire.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
while
Uh,
doing some digging about all these ghosts, I actually found how the fire started. So,
oh,
uh, there was a the way that it was specifically stated was that there was a night that Jean and Arthur were sleeping by the fire when a on fire log rolled out of the fire pit, catching the Christmas tree on fire, and Arthur going to get Bobby and Kathy out of the house, expecting Jean to follow him out. He grabbed the kids and got out of the house, and she didn't make it. Therefore,
Yeah.
her getting, severely burned on her entire right side, and then, taken to the hospital and then succumbing to her wounds.
Yeah. And that probably probably the most emotional attachment we get to any of the ghosts in this movie. Actually, it is the most emotional attachment you get to any of the ghosts in the movie because I feel like she's the only one in the movie I believe we have actual background information for.
I
For obvious reasons, but
Yeah, I
I
I
don't think there's
believe
anyone
she
else.
is.
Yeah.
So then jumping on to the fifth one, the fifth in the Black Zodiac is the Torn Prince. The Torn Prince, his actual name was Royce Clayton. He is the fifth in the Zodiac, and he died from a car crash. So he was, I believe it was late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that. It was
He was the Torn Prince was like from the 1950s because he was like
1950s. Yeah, it was.
he's
It
like
was.
he's like the greaser type of dude, you know.
Yeah. Because so he was a huge baseball player. He was naturally gifted in baseball, and the one of the guys that he played with challenged him to a race. And but without Royce knowing, the guy actually tampered with his car, causing him to lose control of the car and crash, severely disforming his the right side of his face, the right side of his body. A lot of these characters have problems with the right side of their body. If I'm like,
Yeah.
is that something that I noticed? um,
Yeah, he was I feel like out of all like the simplest designs, he has the best like simple one.
oh yeah, absolutely, because his face is just mangled, and he just walks around
It's
with a baseball bat, and he still has his like leather jacket on.
speaking speaking of this fucking bat that he's carrying around, when he takes a swing at Lillard's character in this fucking movie and it causes sparks to fly.
Yeah, well, he's swinging at the glass that has warding on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like
No, I
I,
agree. It's a weird. I don't fully understand why the bat made sparks fly off of it. But then the fact that like Arthur and Rafkin, they literally defeat him by pushing him into a wall.
yeah, yeah,
Like they
yeah.
literally just like are carrying one of the glass panels and just push
And,
him into a wall, and he just
and he's
disappears.
the Torn Prince is also the first aggressive one we see in the movie. I think we see him literally, not one of the first, but in once we get into the house, he's one of the first aggressives that we see.
Yeah, because the
Because he,
the very first one that we see in the movie we'll get to, he's all the way at the end actually. Um, but so we're on to number 6, Rob.
and that would be, I believe. Oh boy, this is a shout out to our friend here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, it is his fucking favorite and the love of his life, the Angry
The Angry
Princess.
Princess. Oh,
All right, what do you know about her?
I know that her character name was Dana Newman. And her entire thing is that when she was alive, she was a beautiful woman in like the late 20th century. Um, and she was very obsessed with like her looks and everything that she had like multiple like plastic surgeries done. Um, but it was like what caused her is because her death was suicide. And the reason that led her to that was because it was like a botched surgery, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was so she saw an imperfection on her face, and one day while she was working in a clinic that she was working in at the time, um, she attempted to do this surgery on herself to take out this imperfection, thus scarring her face, and then leading her to taking her own life, which is Not a good thing. Don't, if anything is going on in your life, make sure that
to
you go
go.
and get help. Things will get better. I promise. You just got to stick it out and, reach out to people. Um,
But and when it comes to character design, I feel like she's probably one of the most memorable for
uh,
specifically her entire thing is she is naked.
yeah, I mean, by far, she is definitely one of the most memorable because, she's naked. She's covered in, cuts and bruises all over
Yeah.
her.
And
And
I would say she's one of the big three ghosts in this movie that gets the
I would
most
say,
amount of attention.
I would say big four.
Big four if you include the withered lover, but outside of her, because I feel like it's different because like the withered lover is separated. Like she actually has story relations to
See,
characters.
I'm actually saying big four, and I'm not including the withered lover because of her
Really,
story connection.
really,
Yeah, I would say that she's like, she's in the top three, but I feel like there's one other ghost that tends to be mentioned, talked about, and we see a fair amount that gets to be added to the top four of these ghosts that get screen time and all the other things. So
already.
what's up?
Oh, I just said already. I because I can only think of the other. I can only think of two more other than the Angered Princess that come to mind when I see them.
That's fair. So going on to number seven, we have the Pilgrimess. So her story is kind of really messed up. If you think about it, so her actual name was Isabella Smith. She's the seventh in the Black Zodiac. So her entire thing was essentially she was like one of the first people to come to America. She like navigated a ship from England to like New England area to like be a pilgrim, whatever the hell you call it, to be a colonist. Jesus, I can't think of the names or words. Oh my god. But so essentially, um, she was accused of basically witchcraft type stuff. They attempted to burn her in a fire, and that didn't work. She came out completely unscathed. So then they gave her a slower, more painful death of tying her up and kids throwing stones at her, women cursing at her, men spitting on her, and then her eventually dying of starvation like a week and a half after this started. Um, which is that's a lot, and like
That is quite a bit, and
I
I feel
almost
like it's
feel bad for
criminal.
her.
I do, and I think it's criminal because she is like out of all the design characters that had really nice ones, she got screwed over just by not being showed enough. Like she was still locked up in the fucking what do you call the things where they have your arms and head locked
Oh,
inside of it?
oh my gosh, what are those called? Stockades.
Yeah, the stockade. She still has that on her. She I think has the chains still attached with it too that kind of weigh her that are weighing her down. You know, you kind of see her flesh is like starting to decay. She has like crazy colored eyes because of all of it, but and she's like in the withered dress and everything that goes along with it. Like she did not get enough screen time in this, and
Oh
I feel like
no,
yeah,
she
it was
didn't.
criminal for this character.
She should have got so much more screen time because she was one of the other ones that was aggressive. Like not many
Yeah,
of the ghosts were fully aggressive, but she was one of the ones that was. And I feel like she should have been shown. She should have had way more screen time than she did. I absolutely think that's something that should have happened, and it's very
that's
upsetting that
fair.
it didn't.
But yeah, um, so I believe next
Next,
is the
we can kind of do the next two together because they're
two for
kind of a
one.
pair.
Yeah, yeah.
So
These
we
are
go
these are
ahead.
two characters that are, I think, well, one of them specifically has just a gross design,
Oh, absolutely, he does.
but it's the great child, and not great in the sense that he's a good boy.
He is anything but a good boy. Oh my god.
And then
The dire
the
mother.
mother, dire mother. Um, these two characters, I feel like two characters I'm glad, specifically because of the great shot. I'm glad I didn't see him more on the screen.
Honestly, I agree. I feel like seeing him more on screen would have been a terrifying thing to go through and witness.
Yeah, I just don't like vomit. Just stop.
So, do you know the whole thing with their characters?
I think this is one I blissfully ignored.
Okay, so I got this one because I did my research. So essentially, the dire mother, her name is Margaret Shelbourne. She's the ninth in. She was a dwarf. She was 3 feet tall, and was, I believe, I want to say like early 19th century. Around was when she was alive. Um, and her entire thing was she ended up at a circus and was being shown off as somebody that is, you know, at the time considered a freak, which I believe is extremely screwed up. And thank God we're out of that era. Um,
Yeah.
but she was, how do I say this without getting demonetized?
Oh, we're past the point of demonetization. We talked about a naked woman. Like,
Yeah, that is true, but we didn't show it. um, so she was abused, it's to say the least. And then she gave birth to her son Harold Shelbourne, the great child. Um, so her being 3 foot tall, and Harold was not 3 foot tall. He did not he was not a dwarf as well, or a little
Ill,
person. Sorry. Um,
illegitimate child made from illegal acts.
yep. So his whole thing was that she protected him constantly and babied him, and that's why it stunted his growth, and why why he's portrayed in a bib and diapers, and like she feeds him and all this stuff because she like treated him like a baby his entire life, and made it so that he never grew out of that phase.
Yeah,
So
that's
the canon way of how they died was that the circus decided to play a trick on Harold, and they kidnapped Margaret, which is really messed up. He then went to go find his mother, found the people that did it, and killed them with an axe. And then found the bag, and she actually suffocated in the bag. uh, he then went on a rampage and showed off the people that he killed on display for people to pay and see at the circus. Then the ringmaster of the circus sent people to tear him apart, and that is how he died. That is the canonic way that these two died. There is actually an original death idea that for these characters of how they were supposed to die, which explains more on why his character looks the way that it does. So essentially, the original death idea was that Harold was supposed to choke on his own vomit
oh god.
and then fall on Margaret, suffocating her.
It's good they didn't go with that one.
Yeah. But the fact that that was the original idea, and they kept the man baby covered in vomit as his design, is just a disturbing idea, and I don't like it.
Maybe what stopped him is they couldn't make uh anything to make a actress look like she was actually flattened like a Looney Tunes, so that's why they didn't go with it.
Oh God, yeah, he is like canonically a very large man. Who actually played the great child? Can I
Uh,
find that?
Ernest Harth,
Was that who played him?
believe so. A lot of the actors who played the ghosts I don't think they did much outside of it.
I don't think they did either, but I mean, he's a big guy. Like he's definitely not a
Ernest,
small
yeah,
person.
Ernest Arth. You know what the funniest thing is? This isn't the first time this man played as a ghost in a movie with Matthew Lillard.
It's not.
No, well, this is the first time he did it, but it's not the only time.
When else did he do it?
Scooby Doo 2, Minor 49er.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yep.
I didn't know that he was in. Wait, no freaking way. Hold on. Uh, that's not the only Scooby Doo movie he was in. The
What?
Scooby Doo The Mystery Begins, the TV movie from 2009, he played the janitor in that movie. He was in multiple Scooby Doo movies.
He was
I
in
mean,
two Scooby Doo movies. He was
that's
in two
still
movies with
multiple.
Matthew Lillard. And this is, uh,
That is, he was in Dreamcatcher too. Who did he play in
was he one of the
Dreamcatcher?
hunters? He had been one of the extra hunters in that
I
movie.
believe he was. He was Barry Nyman.
Yeah, that had been one of the
That has
characters
to
who
be
was
one of the extras.
one of the one of the hunters that was in that because I think that's the only thing else I could think of.
Wow.
But damn, this man has done work.
Oh yes, he has. He was in
Like,
one of our other friends' favorite movie, Dreamcatcher. Robert does not like Dreamcatcher. He in fact hates that movie.
that's for a different episode later. That's when I can scream my lungs out for an hour and a half straight.
Yeah. All right, so going on, we're up to 10.
Yeah, and I feel like now there's only three left. So actually, I get what you're saying now. Why there's big four
Yep.
because I realized I forgot one existing, but I feel like we might want to. I think we want to save. I'll call him the poster boy. I think we'll save him for last.
The poster boy?
All right, poster boy, poster girl. But I think the next
Poster
one.
girl. The only ones left are all boys.
Uh, Either way, the next one has to be the uh, hammer.
Yep. Next on the
Ah,
Zodiac is the hammer.
I would say he's probably my favorite, but that's just because he had a cool hammer.
Yeah, well, one of his hands was literally a hammer.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's his story?
He was a blacksmith in the late 1800s.
I believe
Uh,
late 1800s, early 1900s, something like that.
I know his first name was Herbert. I don't remember what
Nope.
his last name. It's not Herbert.
Nope, that was George Markley.
George Mercury. Maybe the actor's name was Herbert.
I believe the actor's name is Herbert.
But uh, I think another thing is he kind of feels like almost it had almost not exactly the same, but I feel like there was a big like uh the Candy Man is like what he reminds me of for his backstory because he was falsely accused. In this case, it was stealing, um, stealing from like some dude, the
From
in
another
the old
blacksmith.
yeah, uh, and he was threatened to be exiled from the town that he was in, but he was innocent and he knew that, so he stood up for himself. But then one day, the other blacksmith's family was like walking home and they stumbled upon Nathan, uh and
Who the hell is Nathan? His name is Greg or Greg.
whatever.
George.
Either way,
George,
I
not Greg.
George whatever. He looks cool. He has nails in him. That's all I need to know. All right, he has a hand in the hand. He's literally hammer time. All right,
Oh my god, no.
but either way, he gets attacked basically by the other blacksmith and in his like gang, his posse, is whatever the fuck you want to call him. They basically beat him to death. uh, and they like took his hammer. Yeah, no, the other guy took his hammer, tracked him down. Or George took his hammer, tracked the other blacksmith down, beat him to death. But the townsfolk chained him to a tree
And then impaled
outside.
him with railroad spikes.
Yes, yes. Uh,
Which is just
ugh,
a gnarly way to die. And his character looks so cool.
yeah,
It
he's
looks
the coolest
awesome. Like,
design.
it's really,
Uh,
like, creepy, if I'm being honest. But, like, it looks so good.
yeah, I mean, especially the parts where he's pulling the fucking nails out of his body.
Yeah, to, like, use them against people. It's so good. And like his
Ugh,
character design, his character design is just legitimately really cool, and I really like it.
yeah,
So
I
that's
want
number 10. What you got?
to. I want to say, this is gonna be out of order, but I feel like the Juggernaut should be talked about next for a specific reason.
I can agree with you on that. Juggernaut is 12. He is
Yeah.
12th on the list. I can do this one. I'll
Yeah.
do Juggernaut so you can talk about your boy. So Juggernaut, his actual name was Horace Mahoney. Um, he was a man that lost his mother young. His father made him work in a junkyard. After his father died, he became a serial killer, going around picking up hitchhikers and people that cars have broken down and all this other stuff, and bringing them back to the junkyard that his father owned, and literally breaking them to pieces, nicknaming him the Breaker. Uh, and he would like chop them up and then feed them to his dogs. He was finally found out and taken down by cops and SWAT. After killing a bunch of cops, though, he was riddled with bullets from a SWAT team, absolutely destroying him, killing him. And then he went on to, still haunt this junkyard that his father kept him in. And anybody that came in, he would kill.
Yeah. That man, and he's the first ghost we see in the entire film.
And that is
So,
why I say big four. The
yeah.
last three on the list are definitely like three of the biggest, but then you got the Angry Princess, and she is that's I put her like,
She's definitely at the bottom of the list just because
honestly, I put her above the Juggernaut.
really the only reason I put the Juggernaut over her is because he does the one thing that, big spoiler warning if you haven't watched this yet. Him, the Juggernaut, and the Hammer kill Matthew Lillard's character,
That is very true, but like,
and it is quite brutal. Which, another thing that breaks the movie the rules, if you notice that we've been talking about, each of these characters have pretty brutal deaths, which led them to being these very important ghosts.
yep. But I mean, the Juggernaut does lift Matthew Lillard up into the air and then bane him. So
Against the house,
yeah, against the house,
supporting
just
beam the house.
snaps his freaking spine in half.
If it wasn't bad enough, the hammer like crushes his hand,
Yep, with
and
his
then
hammer,
probably does something to the top of his back to paralyze him.
probably. So,
He hits him in the back and fucks him up.
oh, absolutely, he does. That's kind of like his whole thing. He's a hammer.
No, it's hammer time.
So now we get to go on to the poster boy of this movie, in a sense, the probably the most notable ghost in this movie. Like, if you show somebody this ghost, they will immediately be like, "Oh, that's from 13 Ghosts." I feel like.
It's very recognizable. at least because I think it's the one thing that he was in the most amount of marketing, I believe, for
Oh yeah, absolutely.
the
I mean,
movie as
even on
well.
the Blu-ray copy, he's front and
Yeah,
center.
yeah, and this is the Jackal. Um, uh, in real life or in his life, his name was Ryan Coon.
Yep.
Coon. Um, and he was a another ghost that was in his life was in the late 19 or 1800s. Um, very inspired by Jack the Ripper, because his entire character is that he was another serial killer in life, much like the Juggernaut, except he had a very specific appetite for attacking and
Killing
defiling
women.
prostitutes specifically at night.
Well, it was
Uh,
so it was prostitutes and like just any woman that was by herself.
yeah, the in the Blu-ray copy and the special features in the video they talk about it. It specifically says prostitutes. It is said with emphasis that he is going after prostitutes.
Which
But unlike Jack the
I honestly
unlike Jack the,
find like that kind of surprising considering that like his backstory is he was literally born to a prostitute. Like a
yeah,
his
he was,
mother was a prostitute.
I mean, mommy issues take shape in very different ways, and in this case for the Jackal, it was killing them and doing very other horrible things.
Oh yeah.
But unlike Jack the Ripper, he actually seeked to be cured, and this is the late 1800s, so he was able to voluntarily commit himself to an insane asylum for treatment. And once again, this is the late 1800s. So
They
not only were their methods questionable for treatment,
they were
he was
just
like,
brutal.
yeah, like solitary confinement was, I believe, the biggest thing for him because he's in the straitjacket,
Yeah,
and
so like the solitary confinement and the straitjacket, and then anytime that he would act up, they would tighten the straitjacket on him,
yeah,
like
and this
causing
led to
his ribs to break and his body to contort.
yeah, and over time, this caused him to go completely insane. He would do things like scratching on the wall so violently that his fingernails would become completely torn off.
That is
And in response to that, after not only just tightening completely, I believe the doctors just kept him permanently in the straitjacket.
yep,
And
permanently in the straitjacket, and then they actually he bit his way out of the straitjacket at one point,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
why
and
he has the metal cage around his head.
yeah, yeah. That it was after because he was gnawing through it to get free. So they locked him in the cage. He then developed it in his insanity. He developed the hatred for all of humanity.
Yep.
Uh, and he kind of like became a bit more cowardly towards them whenever he was approached by like the doctors and any of the people that would he'd be around in the asylum. But he died when the asylum went up in flames. But yet he chose to stay in the fire and perish there.
Yep.
Everyone else was
Everybody
getting
else
out just
left.
to escape. But this man was just like, he was quite literally the fucking meme of the dog, like, this is fine.
Yeah. Everything's all right. I deserve to be here.
I'm all right with this. Uh,
So I feel like
but
there's one other thing. I kind of want to like jump back to the Juggernaut quick because like this is something that I just saw and I feel I really want to put this in here. So Robert, you are a tall man.
yes,
You are a very tall guy. The Juggernaut, the guy that plays him, his name is
John
John
DeSantis.
DeSantis. He is 6 foot 11 inches tall.
Yep, he is a big man.
That is fucking huge. Like Matthew Lillard, for comparison, I'm pretty sure he's like 6 foot. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this man is a whole foot taller than him and lifted his ass and snapped his spine. Ugh, it's crazy to think about.
Folded him like an omelet, as the kids say these days.
God, you're
But
making us sound old.
not that old.
You're
But
still making us sound old.
um, I'm trying to figure out other things that John DeSantis played in.
Oh, he was
Um,
in a ton of things. Uh,
when the new Addams Family, the TV series in like the '90s, was appearing, I believe he played Lurch.
yep, he played
Um,
Lurch. Uh, let's see. I'm going to his.
um, the actor is just so like rememberable. Like I saw him. Oh, one movie that not many people are gonna know. He played in a movie with the Wayans brothers, called Little Man, and I specifically remember it because it's the movie where Marlon Wayans has his head CGI cropped onto uh, on a short actor,
Yep.
and there's a scene of him fighting John DeSantis out of makeup, and it is unironically one of the funniest movie scenes that sits in my head.
You know what? That's fair. So there's a bunch of stuff that he's been in. He's been in a lot of TV shows. Like he was in Supernatural. He was in the Van Helsing TV show. He
He
was
played in
in
an
the
episode
series
of
of
Psych.
Unfortunate Events, the Netflix TV show of that. He was in Psych for one episode.
Yeah, I think he was a very small part in that one. He was oh, Smallville. He played Solomon Grundy in the Smallville show.
Yep. He played in 30 Days of Night, Dark Days. He was in Stan Helsing as Frankenstein.
Yeah, but do we really talk about Stan?
No. Uh
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just something that was in here. Obviously he was in 13 Ghosts. He was in Police Academy for one episode as a thug. Like he was in a lot of different stuff, but like I
Yeah.
can't get over the fact that this man is almost 7 feet tall. Like he's literally
He
half a foot taller than you.
listen, man. It's crazy, okay? Because the worst part is I think they definitely like wanted to make it so that the Hammer. I'm not sure how the tall the actor who played the Hammer was,
Hold on, I
but
can find it. Go ahead, keep talking.
I feel like they like specifically shot and framed when the two of them were close to each other to make it look like they were about the same height, or at
Yeah.
least close in height.
Well, the Herbert uh Duncanson, I think that's how you pronounce
Yeah.
his last name. Um, he is 6'4", and he was in other movies such as Grave Encounters 2 and Catwoman.
Exactly. They definitely were trying to film it so that those two were about like looked equal in height.
Yeah. Even though
Um,
it's really hard to, and they did a fairly good job to like make it out like they were the same height,
yeah.
because
And
I
I
mean
feel like
I thought they were around the same height, but it turns out that uh the Juggernaut is literally like more than half a foot taller than the
yeah.
Hammer.
And I think at this point it's a good thing to talk about another thing, which I would argue is its character and of its own, because it's a callback to like William Castle, and a lot of the movies he made were like one set movies, quote unquote, because they didn't have multiple locations. You know, they were specifically combined to a very specific space,
Yeah,
and the house in 13 Ghosts in itself is its own character, because not only is it different from a regular haunted house, which is dark, um, crooked, things don't look like they don't
things
look
look a little wrong.
it looks rough. Whereas where this house is almost on the opposite, it's so far on the opposite spectrum because this thing is symmetrical.
It's
It is
completely made out of glass.
glass, metal beams, and the Latin scripture that is written all across of it. Some of it's questionable if it's actual Latin or not. I don't know Latin, but I don't think half of that is.
Yeah. So
Um,
there is one other ghost that we didn't talk about. So
that is fair.
the movie is called 13 Ghosts for a reason. So in the Zodiac, there's 13 of them, and to complete the, what was it, the Oculus Infernum, they needed a 13th ghost that was derived not by pain, agony, misery, vanity, anything like that. They needed one that was a willing person to die for love, for pure unadult, like pure straight love. And the third ghost was supposed to be Arthur Curticus, the
Yes.
like main character of this movie.
Yeah.
He was supposed to
And
be the broken heart.
yes, it was in Cyrus's entire plan was to trick him into sacrificing himself for his children who Cyrus kidnapped and put in the basically in a piece of this of the contraption um to open up the gates of hell.
Yep.
Um and obviously it didn't go out well to plan. Uh with
Because
the ending of the
Arthur
movie
did
of him,
not die.
he did not die. Cyrus kind of Cyrus, you get this entire thing where it builds up to that. Cyrus captured these ghosts and held them there against their own will, which I would argue some of them ghosts shouldn't be out there in the world.
Yeah, so like he
Shouldn't
definitely
be
like
free.
like there's a few of them that like weren't really bugging anybody. Like the firstborn son, he doesn't really do anything. The withered lover didn't really do much. The great child and the dire mother, even though they are the great child is a disturbing thing to look at, they're not aggressive, and like
They're
therefore they didn't really have a reason to be locked up.
But I'm just saying, at the end of the movie, when they are set free, you're seeing the Jackal fucking dance gleefully as he's walking out of there, and I'm just like, that motherfucker's about to go find the nearest prostitute.
And just start killing. I mean, hey, there's one thing that we didn't have to worry about, and that was the torso walking out, considering that he doesn't have legs.
That's very fair. I don't think we get to see a shot of him leaving. He's they have a bigger focus as the other ones are fading away. You kind of see the Jackal and the Hammer and the Juggernaut like fade in the front of the line as they slowly fade into the woods.
Yeah. Whereas, like, Jean, the withered lover, and the bound woman, the torso, the first son, they just kind of disappear. They're set free.
Yeah, and especially with Jean because the Withered Lover is she kind of like didn't finish her business, but she saw that her family was safe in the end,
Yeah,
and that
which kind of completed her business, even though it wasn't
yeah
really finished.
yeah, and she got to move on. She quite literally got to say her goodbyes. It was a nice moment to see. Um, And then another thing I like to bring out here, and I'm going to go back to Matthew Little's character here just because of how good it is.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Bring it back.
He is one his character is one of the best versions I've seen of a psychic in a film because I feel like a lot of the times when we see psychics, which isn't too often anymore, they're not they're represented as like it's a curse, but like it's just like they can deal with it. Whereas Matthew Lillard in here, he essentially he goes into seizures when he's having these visions. He can't touch somebody without literally breaking down and seeing their entire life flash before his eyes.
Yeah, which I completely agree. I think that the way that they demonstrate his like psychic abilities is an amazing way that they do it. It's very
It
clean, it's very crisp, it's very nice.
it is the best. It is the tortured soul character played at its best. All right. And because he does things that he tries to numb the pain. He can't kill it. He has to just numb the pain with pills.
Yep.
And we see Cyrus, and that's one thing you see with like the dynamic between him and Cyrus is in the beginning because he's helping Cyrus catch these ghosts, and he's trying to just take the edge off with some pills, and Cyrus ain't letting that happen because he wants the full powers to work. So I want to see that done somewhere again. A tortured soul for a psychic,
Yeah, instead of like I can make it through this type thing.
Get enough money so he doesn't have to deal with more people, so he doesn't go into seizures, and he's basically an asshole because he needs to be.
Yeah. Because if he gets too close, if he's too nice, people, he watches the people that he starts to care about die.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
then that's another counteraction too. After we see his death, when we see him appear as a ghost to Arthur, it's the most relaxed we see the character.
oh yeah, absolutely. He's at peace because
He
he's
found a
finally
re
like, I'm done.
he found a reason to like himself in sacrificing himself to save Arthur.
Yeah. So, once again, I feel like I gotta ask this before we wrap it up. Do you think you got a chance?
I have a much better chance than last week when he talked about Art the Clown. All right. I'm just saying,
Absolutely.
I'm just saying, like, if it's a matter of me just like breaking off a piece of the wall and shoving myself into a corner,
even
that's all
even
I gotta
even
do.
just even not just that, like just leaving the house. Like
Yeah.
if you
I
can
mean,
get out
I
of the house, you're fine.
to be fair, the house itself shifted and locked them in. So it's impossible to basically break the glass because there's nothing in there to break the glass with.
Yeah. And I understand that, but I mean, essentially if you can figure out how to get out of the house, you're golden. If you can figure
Yeah.
out how to keep the ghosts in their containment cells, you're golden. The only problem is if you have certain ones get out. Because, like, honestly, I gotta say, like, if the Pilgrimess, the Torso, the Great Child, the Dire Mother, the Withered Lover, the Bound Woman, the Firstborn, if any of those ones are out of their cells, I'm fine. I'll live with it. Like, I can, they're gonna be a little bit of a nuisance, and they're gonna give me some jump scares, but like, none of them are gonna do real damage. Besides the
Yeah.
Pilgrimess, like she tries, but her hands are bound. What is she gonna
Yeah.
do? Scream at
Yeah.
me?
It's just a matter of it's more of a matter of competence and how much do you love your family if they get kidnapped by a psycho a psycho uncle trying to become more rich through the gates of hell.
Yeah, which is just an insane premise to this fucking movie. It's one hell of a way to do a closeout for it of like, yeah, the entire reason I'm doing this is because I want more money. Like, shut up. That like you don't have
Like,
any other motivations. You're trying to open hell and talk to Satan. Get power, dude.
like you have money, my guy. Like this is 2001. You could do something with it.
Oh, absolutely.
I think you're losing more money on just the process of capturing these ghosts.
Literally, like you're losing money. These like the people that worked for you to help capture these ghosts, they know
But
the challenges. They have to sign some kind of contract. So when they die, you got to pay out to their families or go into the court of law. Like you're kind of screwing yourself over here, bud.
yeah. But I feel like one more thing that I have to say before we wrap up this episode is um there was a bit of news last August, in 2023, because Dark Castle Entertainment announced that they're planning to make a 13 Ghost series.
They are.
Yes.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
Yes. So hopefully we get something out of that, even if it's just a season, you know. But
Hell, I'd be happy if it was a season with only 12 episodes and each episode just dove into each of the ghosts.
yeah,
I would be
it was
completely okay with that.
the one thing that it's planned. That's what Dark Pictures is planning, or Dark Castles is planning. Basically, at this point, it's in like the pre-production stage. Um, I do believe it. What the plan right now is, Patrick, uh, Mediate, who worked on, who was from a company called Premortal Pictures, and he worked on, Fear the Walking Dead, as one of the special effects supervisors. Um, and then Aaron McClain, another Fear the Walking Dead or yeah, no, Aaron McClain was the SFX supervisor on Fear the Walking Dead, and then along with co-producer Ashley Robinson. Those three are the ones that pitched it to Dark Castle, and right now we have to wait for Sony, who holds the other half of the rights to the 13 Ghosts series, to essentially approve this to go forward.
God, I hope they do. That would be such that like don't get me wrong, like we said at the beginning of this episode and like we've said many times, this is 100% a guilty pleasure movie, but it's a guilty pleasure movie that I would love to see turn into a show.
There's a world behind this movie that has a lot of stories that could be told. If it's a single season that goes into depth about each of the ghosts, and whether that's their just the backstories of these ghosts and how they became ghosts, if it's something of supernatural esque, like the supernatural show, where it's like I'm not sure if you could really recast the characters to play like um Matthew Lillard's character or the character Cyrus. I don't think there's anybody they could really recast to play those characters because I think they both did a decent enough job in the roles. It's gonna be hard to see someone else play it.
That and also like if you throw somebody else into it, like Matthew Lillard's character Rafkin and F. Murray Abraham's character Cyrus, they are by far the most notable characters in this entire fucking movie. And if you all of
Yeah,
a sudden are like, we'll have somebody else play them, it's just not gonna feel the same.
yeah, no. But I do believe in a couple of the things they said is that they might do their own takes with some different ghosts. They won't be like one to one, but essentially have the same idea behind it with like the Black Zodiac and telling the story of these 13 ghosts.
See, that would be something that I would be interested in. Like if there was like even if it was like a before thing of like Cyrus learning about the Black Zodiac and then like going out to find these ghosts, like if they did that and like showed like age progression of him, I feel like that's the
Yeah,
only way that we could get like a different person playing Cyrus. If we had like a younger person playing a younger Cyrus, and then we hit a point and all of a sudden we're doing like time jumps upwards, and then we get like glimpse of flashbacks to the movie and all the other stuff, which is going to be a little bit of one hell of a jump considering how much the film industry has progressed since 2001. But I feel like that
yeah,
would be a really nice way to do it.
yeah. And another weird fact about this movie, it's uncredited, but apparently James Gunn did some rewriting on the script.
Huh. Do you also know that
That that
this movie actually won an award?
I'm gonna guess it had to be related to the fucking practical effects in some way.
Uh, yeah, it was actually. So it was one win and four nominations. It was nominated for the best horror film of 2002 because it was released right at the end of 2001. It was
Yeah,
it was nominated for the Golden Fleece Award. Uh, it was the winner of the Chainsaw Award for best makeup and creature effects, and it was
yeah.
also nominated for the worst film, and it did not take worst film.
Uh, it, like I said, and I think a good way to close this out, if you listen and you want to watch this movie yourself and you haven't seen it yet, I'm sorry if you got this far and we spoiled a bit for you. But you can find this movie on hard to find on streaming. But Shout Factory has released it their under their Scream label or the Scream Factory label, released a Blu-ray in 2020 that is able to pick up basically any online service that you can mostly buy Blu-rays from.
That is true.
Um, and it's also available to rent rent or buy on digital platforms. I would prefer to say you get the physical disc, but if you want to, Amazon Prime, watch it there.
Yeah, but Robert and I are also very big components of get the physical copy. It's a little memento, and then if you ever want to rewatch it, you don't have to rent it again, or go and look for it on your whatever digital streaming service that you use. or that you got it
But
on.
we hoped you, yeah, but we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about ghosts. Because at this point, I don't know what else we're gonna be talking about later. How about you tell them what's gonna happen next time?
How about we leave them at a cliffhanger of we don't know what we're doing.
Oh, you
We
dirty
have a
boy.
couple ideas. We're still going through the long list of horror movies that we have both seen separately that we've watched together. Um, I mean, one thing that I feel like we could definitely do, at the end of the year is we could do a recaps of the, horror movies of the years and or of this year and kind of discuss them and break them down and, where we would put them on a list, rating them. But we'll get to that. It's a tier list, but we'll deal with it when it gets there.
That
But
is fair.
I feel like next week we got some ideas, devils in the details, so to speak. um we'll be here every not Wednesday, every Thursday, 8 a.m. Same as last week, same as this week, same as every week in the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Please watch. We're desperate.
Oh God, Robert, you gotta stop saying that, buddy. We don't want to seem
But
too
I am.
desperate. Just watch/listen, and maybe at some point we'll start doing a video component to this as well. You can find
Yeah.
us on YouTube at Tombstone Productions. Obviously that's probably where you're watching this.
Where the hell else are they
Instagram
listening?
at Tombstone Productions as well. Uh, and hopefully soon we'll start being put up on. We're gonna start putting them up on Spotify as well. So make sure you tune in, keep listening, and watch this horror amalgamation progress into something uncanny.
Aha.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.